Well, basically, still, as Afro-descendants in Europe and in the New World, we're still marginalized. We've made advances since the 60s, certainly the civil rights movement in the U.S. But, for example, in Brazil, which I've just visited, there are 90 million Afro-descendants, and they're just now having an affirmative action program in terms of education for Africans in the school, opening up the universities and so on. So we have not achieved parity, if you will, and I kind of like the word parity as opposed to equality, because we've always been equal, you see, but that has been denied by people who had the advantage and control both the economy and the system itself. So we have to be the ones who understand ourselves. We have to have the confidence in ourselves.
Well, we're at different stages depending on where we are in the world. Absolutely. So that, for example, the African Brazilians were suppressed for far longer and later. I mean,
slavery ended in 1887 in Brazil.
That's right, you see, whereas those of us who have been in this country en masse since 1948, since Windrush, in some ways we fought in a much more concertinaed way over the last 60 or so years. Do you think we should be in a better position in the UK than we are?
Yes, definitely, because what happens is that you have glass ceilings, whether it's in the US or in the UK or elsewhere, in terms of the perception that people have about your potential and your abilities. And preferential treatment is given to others, so to speak, as opposed to parity.
Even though when we attempt to get parity, as you say, people are accused of giving us preferential treatment. The big question is how one deals with that, because you've spoken at the Foreign Office, of course, and have met many black civil servants and at universities. What's your message to those people who've done well, but who are frustrated and who aren't sure how to play the game?
Well, that is it. I mean, it is a bit tricky, so to speak, but we've all played cricket and we've all played on tricky wickets, but that's our duty and that's our responsibility to work that out, because that's the new paradigm, shall we say, for the 21st century. It's not going to be, quotes, mowing down the opposition or mowing down the people who are obstructing us in terms of us living up to our full potential in whatever area we choose to express that potential. It's going to be able to work it out in civil society. So that may very well be on an individual basis. So we have to be our own heroes, and it may not necessarily be, large-scale civil action, like turning out in the streets, or like Occupy Wall Street, so to speak. It has to move from the streets inside, you see, at the university level. Now, certain things have to happen there. So
when you say this, are you channeling the spirit of your father? Are you saying to yourself, what would Dad, what would Marcus say if he were around in 2013? Because thinking about what he did, generating a membership of around 8 to 10 million or so Africans around the world, the Universal Negro Improvement Association. Well, we can't do something like that with the benefit of the internet today. Are you channeling him when you say those things?
Well, I don't know that I'm channeling him. I had the benefit of being born Garvey and being born a Garveyite. Now, my mother indoctrinated me from the earliest years, so I've never had to look outside of his political philosophy, growing up. Although I have critiqued it, I have looked at other philosophies, and as we were talking about earlier on, there was this antagonism, for example, between Du Bois and Garvey.
Yes, it was an awful quote I could find, a series of quotes. Garvey suspected Du Bois was prejudiced against him because he was a Caribbean native with darker skin. Let me quote. Du Bois once described Garvey as a little fat black man, ugly, but with intelligent eyes and a big head. And Garvey called him, purely and simply, a white man's N-word. And a little Dutch, a little French, a little Negro, a mulatto, a monstrosity. What can we learn from this? Because two competing individuals, two big figures, but with very, very different ideas on how to take on and take forward the African, the black agenda.
Yeah, well, the contrast is stark there. I mean, they each had on the boxing gloves and were hitting at each other. But as you say, there is a message there. And, Garvey said, my dad said that, he had an original African mind. So he was an African person through and through. For him, Africa was his standard, whether it was philosophy or religion or beauty. So when somebody like a Du Bois would call him a fat, ugly black man, what standard is he using? He's using a different standard.
Yes.
You see? So that's why my dad critiqued him from that perspective.